Hey, I'm Mark Hunter, the Sales Hunter, and welcome to another episode of the Sales Hunter podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about your CRM and how it's not your problem, but also not your solution. With me today, George Bronten. He's the founder and CEO of Membrane.com, author of the award-winning blog, Art and Science of Cost Deals, and the author of Stop Killing Deals. Hey, let's get on with it because I want to know more about CRM, and we'll go with the show.
You're listening to the Sales Hunter podcast with Mark Hunter, where the focus is to help you as a sales leader sell with confidence and integrity. And now here's your host.
Comes to closing deals, Calendly knows how important maintaining momentum is for your sales team. Calendly provides the automation you need to connect with your best leads faster and schedule every meeting throughout your sales cycle. Prevent scheduling delays that stall deals and let your sales team focus on what they do best, driving revenue. Request your demo of Calendly today. A link is in the show notes below. And George, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice for the invitation. Thank you for that.
Hey, and for those of you who are listening to this, you can't see it. He's actually wearing a t-shirt right now that says, "Your CRM sucks." So I guess you have a few thoughts regarding CRM systems. So, hey, you know what? The floor is yours. Have at it.
Thank you. Well, actually, the CRM sucks may not be the right thing to say, but it gets attention, right? So the main beef I have with CRMs is that they were designed on faulty assumptions. So I think when you design, or when CRM was designed, we assumed that if we put all the information about our customers into a database, and then we have our salespeople log what they've done, then we can pull a forecast and we'll make sales happen. So there wasn't really anything in there from the beginning to say, okay, this is how we make salespeople into better salespeople, or this is how we help managers to coach their sales teams, or this is how we align with buyers' way of making decisions that may include our solutions. So the CRM systems suck because they were just designed on the assumptions that salespeople know what to do with whom and when and why.
I'm going to give an example here. So what you're saying is the CRM system is like tools in the toolbox. But if you don't know how to use the tools in the toolbox, there's no point in having the tools in the toolbox. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, or maybe it's more like the toolbox itself.
The toolbox itself. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
because it's
just blow the thing up here.
It's the database, right? It's where you store the information. I sometimes describe it as an onion of 3 layers. So you have the database, right? Or the toolbox in your example. And then on top of that, you have support for different workflows. So the pipeline could be one of those workflows where you put deals in and you have people, work their deals, and then we can forecast it, etc. And then on top of that, you have a user interface. So that's what the user actually sees. And the CRMs have a very, robust core, great database, but very limited set of tools, which is why you see someone like Salesforce. They've built a huge ecosystem where you can buy all these tools to put in your toolbox. But when you have, 10 tools that overlap and do kind of the same thing sometimes, but different things other times, you can end up in a situation where more tools doesn't really help. Which is, what sometimes is referred to as the Frankenstack. The tech stack.
I love that term. I love that term, Frankenstack. I love that term.
Yeah,
I do believe. Yeah, I do believe that we've got so many tools out there that we're almost beating ourselves into the Stone Age because we can't figure out what we're supposed to do when we're supposed to do it.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's the case that we don't really know what to do in the first place when it comes to selling, and we look for the tools to be some kind of shortcut. Or maybe we do know. It's kind of like exercising, right? How can people buy an abs wheel and believe they'll get a 6-pack without, hardly using it and not changing the diet? It doesn't work. And I think it's the same thing with tools. You can buy, all the tools in the world, but if you lack a good, solid strategy, if you don't have a clear definition of your ideal customer profile, et cetera, you're not going to be helped much. That's why we see all these, spamming going on. People sending out emails left and right in high volumes without even considering much what they put into those emails. And that's now being sort of replicated onto LinkedIn, which I'm sure you're on the receiving end of. And it just drives me nuts.
Well, we're into this whole mode of frequency. I mean, that's what we've been taught, and we all talk about that. But I want to back the bus up a little bit because I love your analogy of an onion. I think that's better than my analogy of the toolbox, but you're the paid professional, so I like that. Here's the piece, though. You raised this issue of strategy versus CRM. What comes first, the system or strategy?
Well, the strategy, of course, you need to really understand who you're trying to help and how, and also why. If we go back to that, like why does your company exist in the first place? But breaking that down into a strategy and breaking that strategy down to a process, I think many selling teams have not done that properly. Like, we're using CRM for pipeline management and storing information, but we're not really using it as a system to guide our salespeople and managers to make sure that they consequently do the right things with the right type of buyers, with the right stakeholders in those accounts at the right time, etc. So there's very little guidance in traditional CRM systems, which is why we've seen so many new tools pop up that are called guided selling or playbook tools, and there are a bunch of different solutions to this.
Okay, now I a lot of tools are being forced upon us, or people are taking them in because they're trying to justify the investment they've got behind their CRM system when they still really haven't figured out what the strategy is. So yeah, I did throw you a baited question earlier, and you did answer it correctly. So you get to come around and you get to come play for the second half of the show. So that's good. Congratulations. But this whole issue, and again, people are chiming in right now, in terms of CRM systems, and Chris asked, what does George recommend for a CRM system for small business? I mean, is there or should people say, hey, you know what? It's necessary.
Yeah, no, I think the that question gets asked a lot, and I don't think it's about the size of your company. It's about what are you selling, and what is the perceived complexity of that decision for the potential buyer. So you should select the system, not just CRM system, but any system you use to support your way of selling. And in my book, it's also about making that way of selling into your competitive advantage, because everything looks the same to buyers. When they Google something for your services, your product, they're going to find probably 10, or in our case, hundreds of competitors that claim to do the same thing. So I believe strongly that how your salespeople sell is going to be maybe the only differentiator you have. So you need to select the system not based on the size of your company, but based on the complexity of your sale.
And I love that, because that's what Adam is picking up in his comment in terms of, it may not be the CRM system that sucks, but rather the alignment between management and sales, and getting that whole strategy correct. Now, you've used a term before, guardrails. You got to have guardrails on the process. Walk me through, walk the audience. What do you mean by having guardrails around your CRM and your sales process?
Yeah, and I think the comment there is, of course, correct, but it's not either or. Like, to go back to your comment about the toolbox earlier, if you only have the toolbox and there are no tools in the toolbox, it doesn't matter. If you have a great blueprint for the house, you're not going to build the house. So yeah, it's a complex problem, of course. But guardrails, I think maybe starting from prospecting, I think one thing people may not do very well when it comes to prospecting is to have a very clear definition of when a prospect is converted into an opportunity, or what we call sales project in the pipeline. So we've seen, especially with the marketing, inbound marketing and MQLs, SQLs, and all this stuff, that people put stuff into the pipeline because they meet certain criteria. Maybe marketing created some MQL score, and all of a sudden you have something in your pipeline as an opportunity that should never be there because it hasn't been properly qualified. It's just a number of people from that company might have downloaded stuff. That doesn't make it an opportunity, right? So you have to be very good in defining your ICP. So who is our ideal customer profile? Who can we help? Who do we want to help? I mean, we want to help, but we also want to make sure that when we help that we actually make money while doing so. And when can we help them? So if someone is a good fit, but they're not making any changes in the next year, then it probably shouldn't be in the pipeline now. So so having a clear definition, and that's one good guardrail that I see a lot of companies not doing very well, because if you skip that step and allow anything to be put in the pipeline based on the gut feel of marketing or salespeople, then how will you be able to benchmark things like sales cycles, win rates? It's going to be very difficult if you just put stuff into the pipeline I don't know this American expression, but based on guesses. So that's one example of a guardrail.
Well, yeah. I mean, I love this whole thing because you bring up the dreaded 3-letter Q. Marketing qualified leads are just that, marketing qualified. That doesn't make them SQL, sales qualified leads. And you're right, it does gum up the pipeline fast. I mean, you talk about creating a traffic jam between the guardrails. Throw all your MQLs in there, and you're going to be in trouble. And yet, management mandates, came from marketing. We got to put them in the system. We got to work the leads.
Yeah.
How do we break that cycle? Because again, I think it runs against the strategy of what you talk about in terms of focusing your mind.
Yeah, no, I think it goes back to this efficiency versus effectiveness discussion, right? There's a lot of focus on efficiency, do things fast, do a lot of, send out a lot of emails, do a lot of calls. But if we're not doing the right things, if we're not being effective, then nothing will come out of it, or very little will come out of it. So I think we need to shift, in leadership and management, like, okay, if efficient doesn't cut it, you have to become effective, and maybe you need to be effective first and then efficient. But you could argue the other way around. But I think to be productive, you have to be able to multiply efficiency times effectiveness. So you need both, but you can't just have efficiency. And I think that there's too much focus on that. And there also in the tech space, I think my whole industry is to blame for this, because that's what's sold using technology, like automation, AI. You can have the computers send all these emails out, which wouldn't be humanly possible if you did it manually. But that doesn't make it right. Doesn't make it effective if all your people you're sending emails to get upset and pissed off and put you on your, on the blacklist. That's not great. That's not efficient. It's efficient if you count the number of emails, but it's not effective if you want those people to buy from you. So I think it's a mindset issue.
Yeah. You bring up a great point there, and that is, too many times people equate efficiency as being effective, and it's not. I mean, I look at the typical SRB process, and it's all about efficiency. It's how many cycles can I get through? How many? And for some reason, this belief is if I do enough of this stuff, it's going to wind up being effective. But you're blowing this myth out of the water. I want to back up. I want to back up to your conversation regarding strategy and guardrails, because you shared one point. What's something else that sales leaders have got to get right in terms of the guardrails?
Well, I think understanding that selling is not really about selling. I mean, selling is about helping someone make a decision to get from one point to another point. So we're helping someone by providing our knowledge, our skills, our products, our solutions. But in order for them to see how our products and services fit into their environment, of course, then we have to understand them very well. And I think the guardrail there is to of course, if I'm selling sales effectiveness, if I'm selling CRM, sales enablement, I need to understand what problems does my customer have. Okay, they believe they're not getting enough leads, but I think they have a low win rate. And if they would just increase their win rate, they wouldn't need more leads. They would just need to work on better leads, fewer leads at a higher win rate. So they might have a problem they have in their head that doesn't align with what I think is the best solution for them. So of course, I need to then put guardrails in there for my salespeople to have the right types of conversations with those potential customers to get them to see, okay, so maybe the problem we're looking at is not the main number one problem we have. So you're saying we should be looking at this instead of that. Yes, that's what we're saying, and this is why, and let's talk about that. So you have to put guardrails in there. And another thing that I find is probably the number one issue in selling, in complex B2B sales, is that we are not talking to the right stakeholders. We're not involving the right stakeholders. And with that, stakeholders is maybe a buzzword, but the people involved in making a decision that might involve your product and solution, right? So we engage with one person, maybe two people, but there will be more people involved. And we know that. We've read it on the blogs, we've read the books and all that good stuff. But still, we have these happy ears and we believe that this customer, when the person says to me, I'm going to make the decision, I'm the main decision maker, everybody else will just do what I tell them that we should be doing. It's not true, right? It's a lie. So you have to be able to engage all these different people that need to be involved. And it's like coaching, right? You need to coach your ambassador or coach or whatever we want to call them to know how the decision will be made and bring in the right people as early as possible. And if that's not possible, maybe that's a sign that there's no deal to be had because it's not a priority. And then we can qualify out or, put some more effort into it and maybe we can move the deal forward. But we don't want to have a pipeline full of crap, because we have happy ears and we believe that there's going to be a deal, but there's no deal to be had. So all these best practices, and maybe that's a silly word, but things we know we ought to be doing, but we don't always do, need to be done.
Okay, we're going to come back and talk more about this whole skinny pipeline and the fallacy of happy years. But right now, we need to thank the great people at Calendly for their sponsorship. If you're ready to get control of your calendar and book more high-value meetings, then it's time to get started with Calendly. See the link in the show notes to learn more. I want to come back. Skinny pipeline, happy years. You're right. I mean, salespeople fall victim of that all the time. Just because they get a conversation going, they think they have a potential customer. How do we get past that?
Yeah, that's where you need to have a process in my book that goes beyond just a number of stages, right? Because in most CRMs, you have a few stages and then they're also very inside out. So we believe if we do A, then we'll move on to B and we'll do C and we'll do D, but it's not like that, right? You need to get the buyer, or kind of dislike that word. You need to get the potential customer engaged and really be sharing that information of what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. And sometimes in a complex B2B deal, they don't know how the decision will be made. They might not even know who needs to be involved. So you need to really have, if you think about like a process, you need to have not just a stage, but within a stage, there needs to be milestones. And to reach those milestones, you might need to have a few steps. Like, have you identified the right people? Have you heard them say that this is a prioritized problem? Which problem? Who have you engaged with over time? You need to have a visual representation of your engagement of all the people in the account. And this is really interesting. When you visualize this stuff, like every engagement a salesperson has had with all the stakeholders we need to engage with in an opportunity, it's so obvious that we spend so much time with one person, that initial person that we've built a relationship with. And then we spend, 10% maybe with all the others. So that needs to change, and you need to have all these maybe steps or milestones or whatever you want to call them, to make sure that they align. They need to align around the problem. They need to talk about the problem. They need to share why it's a big issue. They need to confirm to you that they will be solving the problem, not just buy your stuff. That's secondary, but solve the problem that you can help them with. If they're solving 20 other problems and they're more prioritized, they're not going to get to your problem, even though they say they might. Or one guy maybe has your problem as their main problem, but the other guys and girls are not. So, yeah.
You are speaking so much truth there, and there's so much there. Is there an issue? Is there urgency and a need for it to be dealt with? Should they engage with you? And the other piece, that whole number of relationships. I was having this very same conversation already this morning with somebody, talking about the shallowness most salespeople have when it comes to customer relationships. They have one or two relationships. That's it. Mm-hmm. And yet I question if CRM systems do a valid enough of a job guiding us and showing us where our deficiencies lie in those relationships. I don't think CRM systems do that. I don't know. Maybe
no, and that's why we see all these tools being added to the stack, right, to help us do that. And in my world, we also have in selling, we have several workflows. Like we have prospecting, which is to identify potential customers and earn the right to sort of speak to them. And then once we've identified that we can help them, then we create an opportunity. And then we have the opportunity management, which is a separate workflow, and pipeline management is. And then we win the account, and then we have account planning, account growth, customer success. So we have multiple processes we have to manage. And also another issue, I think, with CRMs is that there is no glue between these things. So you have a prospect, you convert it into I don't know what they're called in many other CRMs, maybe account, and then you create an opportunity. But there's nothing sort of that flows from start to end. So when you're a customer success person and you are looking into the opportunity, there's very, very little overview of what you've promised for that customer, because it's basically a process of stages, and there's hundreds or maybe thousands of activities. Like the visual overview of what we're trying to help the customer to accomplish is critical, that is handed over, like passing the baton. If you have SDRs and AEs, that's a way to pass the baton. Then you have the AE passing the baton to the CS. All those, if we can drop the baton so hard, we can do such a great job all the way to signing the deal. And then if we mess up on the delivery side of things or the customer success side of things, well, that's not going to be a very long-lived relationship. They might churn because we did such a poor job internally understanding how we now should execute on this promise we've made to this customer. So I really think we have to be better at all these workflows and how they are connected, and should be working to the best interest of the customer.
Right. But the CRM system in and of itself is not the solution, but it's also not the problem. So anyway, hey, George, we're coming down to the end of the show. Now, hey, you're in Austria, Germany? Where?
I'm in Sweden, actually.
Sweden. Okay. See, I totally blew that one. Okay. I'm sorry.
But I'm half German, so you were partly right.
Oh, but you're half German. Okay. Anyway, hey, how do people get in touch with you? And timbarame.com. Just give us a 20-second overview. What is that all about?
Yeah, so we're all about putting the how to sell into a system, and it includes a CRM. So we're a CRM replacement for any company that's involved in a complex B2B sale. And all the workflows from prospecting to customer success. So away with the Frankenstack, enter Membrane. And to get a hold of me, easiest way is on LinkedIn. I'm active there, and go to membrane.com/blog and subscribe to the blog.
Great. Hey, with that, I want to say thank you for listening, and thank you, Calendly, for sponsoring today's show and continue to help sales teams focus on driving revenue, prevent scheduling delays that stall deals, and let your team focus on what they do best, driving revenue. Link to Calendly is in the show notes below. Hey, I do trust you value the content shared, and you'll take a moment to subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. This is an episode you got to share with sales managers, sales leaders. Each week, you get 2 shows. One, a short sales insight from me, and the second, an interview with a leading sales expert. The Sales Hunter Podcast, your answer to cutting-edge sales insight. I'm Mark Hunter. Thanks for listening. Thank you, George, for making this show happen today.
Thank you.